Well, we have a few technical problems. We're going to try to get the speakers working. And meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and get started because it is 3:05. Thank you. Been here too long. If anyone was in my last presentation, a few of the slides are going to be duplicated, but we're going to do it from the educational perspective, and Brenda's going to help with that. So to get started, I will introduce myself. I'm Sue Abelhassan. I'm with the Department of Children and Families. I'm the Criminal Justice Coordinator for the Central Region, which means I do all the missing children and the human trafficking cases for our region. And to my right is Brenda. I'll let her introduce herself.
I'm Brenda Christopher Minch from Orange County Public Schools. I'm the health education resource teacher, and previously I was the project coordinator for a grant from the CDC for HIV, STD, and teen pregnancy prevention. So that's where I first started hearing information about human trafficking.
Okay, and I didn't even ask if we have a clicker in this room. This room, my last room I was full. Everything was perfectly set up. Okay. You want me to click? I can do it. I guess I just won't move around very much. So to start any human trafficking training, we have to start with the definition. If you've been here all day, you've probably heard it 3 or 4 times already. But the federal definition for human trafficking is the recruitment, harboring, transportation, provision, or obtaining of a child for labor or services through the use of force, fraud, or coercion. However, you do need to remember that for sex trafficking, if the child is under 18, you do not need force, fraud, or coercion because the child is not at the age of consent. So that just goes out the door. Don't have to have force, fraud, or coercion at all for under 18. You also have a remote, do you know? I'm not. Okay, we'll survive without the remote. If you can get the speakers working, that'd be good. Trafficking victims can be smuggled into the United States. They can arrive with a legitimate visa, or they could be living here and born here. You don't have to have movement for trafficking. A lot of people think you do, but you don't. There can be movement, there can be smuggling, it can be related to trafficking, but it's not a requirement for trafficking. So trafficking victims can be smuggled, but they don't have to be. And trafficking occurs in many different situations, including domestic servitude, construction, landscaping, sex industry, factories, sweatshops, migrant farm works, etc., restaurants, food industry. I think you all know that. It can happen really anywhere. And it's not that the Hilton Hotel will traffic their employees, it's that they use subcontractors that are the real true traffickers. So let me get this going again. Statistics, you've probably seen this today as well. There's 20.9 million victims worldwide, 2.5 million in the United States, 18,000 to 20,000 new victims are brought to the United States, 600,000 to 800,000 victims are trafficked annually worldwide, 56% of all victims are women and children, and 83% are used in the sex industry in the United States. So 83% of the women and children in the United States are used in the sex industry, while 16% are used in the sex industry internationally. It's a very lucrative business. After drug trafficking is tied with arms trafficking. It's very lucrative because you're selling people. You're selling the same person over and over and over. If you're going to be trafficking in drugs, you go buy a kilo of cocaine, and once you sell that and traffic that, then you have to replace it and do another investment. But with people, you get the same person back, and you're able to traffic them over and over and over. So it's very lucrative, and it's all about money and greed when it comes to trafficking, human trafficking. Social service providers and school personnel play an important role in identifying and helping trafficking victims. Anybody in here from the school system? We were a little good. Ideally, this was kind of targeted for the school system, but we found out that the Department of Education didn't get it sent out in time. It got full before they were able to register, so I'm glad a few of you were able to get in here. But even though we think it's a hidden problem, once you know what to look for, they're all right in front of you. You'll see it all the time.
School personnel play an important role because we have the children. We're with the children all day long for approximately 13 years while they are going through their developmentally critical years. So we also have access to their parents. And we are focused on academic performance, but we realize that connections exist between the students' immediate health status and that academic performance. Research shows that well-designed and well-implemented programs can promote healthy behaviors, and the school systems have been involved in public health issues since the beginning. Some examples of that would be like health education, physical education, food nutrition services, and helping students with basic health services while they're on school campuses. So trainings for school personnel are really important. It's best if they're available in person and online so that we can have access as often and as at various times as possible. In our district, if we want to offer training for all school personnel, it has to be approved through the superintendent's office. So it has to go through a lot of approval processes. But as a health education resource teacher, I can offer training to my people on a smaller scale, just as if the school counselors can have training through their offices and the social workers can have their training through their offices. The good part about that is that you can target the trainings to the specific group of people, but the negative part of that is that you have to get buy-in from all these different groups of folks within the school system to want to have the training for their folks. So it can be a little bit more laborious to get through that process. And then, as I heard mentioned many times today, funding is really important if we want teachers and other staff members to attend on their free time, on their extra time, and it's easier to get volunteers to attend when they're going to get paid. So some of the information that could be presented would be human trafficking signs and symptoms, labor laws, which Sue is going to cover more so later in this presentation. Tips for interacting with potential victims, I think, is really important for our school personnel because you can't just say whatever you want to say. It has to be the right terminology and a sensitive presentation or sensitive conversations. And then mandated abuse reporting information is crucial for our school personnel. We can't report abuse if we don't realize that we're watching it, that we're seeing it.
Now, one thing I want to mention that you're talking about the abuse reporting is the human trafficking maltreatment that was added by the DCF Hotline in 2009 is different than any other maltreatment. You do not have to have a known alleged perpetrator, nor do you need a person in a caregiver role. So it's a little bit different. It's easier to call in reports on human trafficking than the other maltreatments. You have to have more information for the other maltreatments. How do I identify a victim of human trafficking? This is actually taken from the U.S. Department of Education, and I actually have copies of that with me that we'll leave out for you. Remind me later to get those out. But a victim has unexplained absences from school for a period of time and is therefore a truant, demonstrates an inability to attend school on a regular basis, chronically runs away from home, makes references to frequent travel to other cities, exhibits bruises and other physical trauma, withdrawn behavior, depression, or fear, lacks control over his or her schedule or identification documents, is hungry, malnourished, or inappropriately dressed based on weather conditions or surroundings, and shows signs of drug addiction. And this is actually taken off the U.S. Department of Education's website. Additional signs to indicate sex-related trafficking, more specifically, demonstrates a sudden change in attire, behavior, or material possessions. All of a sudden, they're coming to school, they're dressed differently, they have more expensive items, they maybe now have a cell phone, they have tattoos, make references to sexual situations that are beyond age-specific norms, has a boyfriend who is noticeably older, usually 10 or more years, make references to terminology of the commercial sex industry that are beyond age-specific norms, engages in promiscuous behavior, may be labeled fast by peers. This is all taken from the U.S. Department of Education's website. We'll talk a little bit more about different type of terminology and indicators as we go on. Here I have a list of identifying victims of human trafficking. This is for all forms of human trafficking, sex, and labor, and this is actually taken out of the DCF indicator tool for child abuse investigators. But these are just some common indicators as well. Shows evidence of physical, mental, or sexual abuse, cannot or will not speak on own behalf or is not English speaking, is not allowed to speak to you alone or is being controlled, does not have access to identity and or travel documents, works unusually long hours and is unpaid or paid very little, will not cooperate, gives you wrong information about identity and living situation, is not in school, truancy is a big one, or skipping school, has significant gaps in schooling, lives at his or her workplace or with an employer and or lives with many people in a small area, has a heightened sense of fear and distrust of authority, and has engaged in prostitution or commercial sex acts. All of these together or individually are indicators as well. You have to see the whole picture to know what's really going on. that I listed those here for you. Kind of reminds me of domestic violence. Anybody in this room work with domestic violence victims? The power and control and the fear of the victim. It's very similar.
So it's important to get the school personnel on board, but it's also important to educate our youth. And according to Florida Statute 1003.42, comprehensive health education is supposed to be taught to all students in grades K through 12. And there are concepts that are included within that comprehensive health education, such as family life, mental and emotional health, safety, internet safety, prevention and control of disease, where human trafficking could be included. The comprehensive health education concepts do not have to be part of a health education class. They can be separated out. For example, in Orange County, when family life is taught in the middle schools, we have family life teachers who are science teachers, we have some who are health education teachers, we have some who are physical education teachers. So I'm going back to that because of the training piece. We have to get a lot of different people trained to be able to implement the information. And you'll notice there that less than 1% of Florida secondary students are actually enrolled in a health education course. There are Next Generation Sunshine State standards that drive what is taught in the courses, and the Next Generation Sunshine State standards support the implementation of human trafficking, such as goal setting, decision making, promoting disease prevention, demonstrating the ability to practice health enhancing behaviors, avoidance or reduction of health risk for oneself. So there are many places that this could be implemented within health education. So for that to happen, the teachers need to have content knowledge that's different than just an overall training on human trafficking. And lesson plans have to be created. We can create those for the teachers, but they don't have to implement those lesson plans exactly as they are. They have the ability to create their own lesson plans. So additional training needs to take place, again, to touch upon that sensitivity piece and how to implement that with the students. If I'm a teacher and I have a classroom of 30 students and I may or may not have a victim of human trafficking in my classroom, I have to be aware of that and sensitive to that.
Okay, like I said earlier, in May 2009, the Department of Children and Families added the maltreatment of human trafficking to the hotline. So that very first year, which was really only for 6 months, statewide, the hotline received 43 reports. The next year, 2010, 202 reports were called in. 2011, 427 reports. And 2012, last year, we had 637 reports received to the hotline statewide. Again, these are reports that are called in. Doesn't mean that they're verified cases, but it's just to show you that the more awareness and the more training like this, the more reports we're getting, because it is everywhere and people need to recognize it. This year, we're thought to have between 800 to 1,000 reports that will be called in. And I don't have a clicker with me. So I broke it down for you because a lot of people want to know their area, what's going on. So last year, in 2012, I broke down the counties that had received at least 2 reports. As you can see, and next to 2012, you'll see a 2013 number. That's only for the first 6 months of this year, through June, the reports that were called into that area. So Miami-Dade has the top number, obviously. In the first 6 months of this year, it's 72. So obviously, we're going to think they're going to definitely go more than they did last year. Broward County is the second county in high numbers. 87 last year, 62 for the first 6 months. Again, everyone's kind of trailing the same amount of growth. Hillsborough had 59 reports last year, 41 so far the first 6 months this year. Orange County and Hillsborough are kind of like neck to neck. You can see last year one was 59, one was 58. But this year, Orange County is surpassing Hillsborough in reports received to the hotline. So those are the top 4 counties in the state that are receiving reports, but you can see the rest of yours. If you look down at St. Lucie, they had 2 reports all of last year, but this year they've already had 15 for the first 6 months. So it's growing in awareness is what the difference is. Obviously, the protocol when a report's called to the hotline, the child protective investigator is the first responder. And again, like I said, a report for human trafficking may be accepted by the hotline even if the alleged perpetrator is not a caregiver or is unknown. It's different than the other maltreatments. The maltreatment usually is accompanied with other allegations of abuse, neglect, or abandonment. But these are the type of reports we receive. The majority are sex trafficking reports. We have received some baby selling reports, but again, if it's not sex trafficking for minors, there has to be forced fraud or coercion for any other type of trafficking. So if you have a pregnant mom or a pregnant mother-to-be who wants to go out and bid and sell that baby to the highest bidder, that's not really trafficking because there's no forced fraud or coercion. It's definitely illegal. She's selling baby illegally, but it's not trafficking because she's not being forced to do that, or there's no fraud or coercion for that. Traveling sales crews is a big thing we're seeing a lot of, and this is actually those kids you see going door to door selling things out of tubs, and they're being exploited. And I actually have a little video of a Hernando County case that happened over the summer, I believe it was, not too long ago. Yeah, these are the type of tubs. They go around. You have candy here to sell too? $8. $8 for a dollar bar of candy. They go around selling things, and they do it in the name of usually Teens Against Drugs, Teens Against Drugs and Alcohol, Tenacious Teens. They create these names where you feel like they have a nonprofit organization, and they will show you a paper, Articles of Incorporation for a nonprofit corporation, named Teens Against Drugs or whatever name they're using. But anybody in this room can go online, Department of State of Florida, and register a corporation, nonprofit, pay $75 and print out Articles of Incorporation. There's no other work required. There's no background checks. There's no nothing. It's really an illegitimate business what they're doing. There's no nonprofit. They're not doing drug awareness. They're not doing anything but collecting and making $500,000 a year as a leader of this organization. These kids, they target poor areas. They target schools in the lower socioeconomic areas, and they pass out flyers to kids getting off school buses. And the kids come home, and the parents think the school is supporting it because they come home with the flyer off the school bus, and it says teens can work for money. That's usually what it says. Well, labor laws, and I think I have a screen about labor laws. Right. If you're under 14, you can't work, period. That's why you can't go to McDonald's and get a job under 14. And selling things door to door is considered a hazardous occupation as well. So if you're 14 and 15 at a hazardous occupation, you must be supervised at all times. So these kids who are going door to door who are 14 and 15, there's supposed to be someone standing right behind them watching them. They're not supposed to be dropped off from a van in a neighborhood or at Publix or wherever it's at and let them just go and pick them up after 6 or 7 hours, which is what's happening. Parents are being told one thing. The kids are not being fed necessarily or given water or have supervision or anything. We've had an 8-year-old child who was from Orlando, who was found in Volusia County. She fainted in a neighborhood because she was dehydrated, and she was all alone. I mean, what 8-year-old should be going door to door selling things, period? You don't know whose door you're knocking on. You don't know which one is the sexual perpetrator in the neighborhood. I mean, it's just hazardous. It's just ridiculous. These kids are being exploited so much. They are given $2 for everything they sell, usually. And then the actual leader of the group gets the $6. There is no other nonprofit organization at all. The leaders of these groups actually have criminal history that wouldn't allow them to work with children. I mean, it's a big scam that's going on. Here's a video, and let's see if this one plays without me closing it. Yes, it does.
Tonight, a door-to-door scheme involving young kids is busted right here in the Bay Area. Deputies say the kids spent more than 5 hours out in the heat without any food, water, or way to get in touch with the two men who put them up to it. Our Jacqueline Iglesias is following this story for us and joins us now. Jacqueline, how did deputies get involved in this?
Well, Jameson, one of those kids became so thirsty while walking around Spring Hill that they rang a doorbell and asked a resident to please give them water. And that concerned resident called police.
Yeah, they were tired, they were sweaty, they were young.
The boy who came to Gregory Lezick's Spring Hill door Wednesday was one of 9 Orlando kids authorities say were exploited in a door-to-door scam.
He had a little basket with him, like a Rubbermaid thing, and he had his papers on top.
Inside that basket,
they went to the dollar store and bought various items: dog biscuits, candy, cookies, fiddle faddle, peanut brittle.
Residents say the boys claimed to be collecting donations for a nonprofit youth group. And those papers Lezick saw in the boys' basket, police told us those were cue cards written out for the kids with specific instructions by these men, Kendi Sennett and Terrence Holliday.
They were just left out to wander. They didn't know anything.
Walking in the 90-degree heat for 5 hours, the kids, who range in age from 12 to 15, began asking people for water. Concerned there was no adult with the kids, One resident called police.
I think it's terrible when they exploiting children like that.
Police say the kids were selling those dollar store goodies for $8 a piece. The bulk of the money went to these two men, and the kids got to keep $2. The kids reportedly said they made about $50 a week. On Wednesday alone, the group duped residents here into giving them $500. Only they didn't get money out of this man.
Well, I'm glad I didn't do anything except let him use my phone.
Bob Hahn says 3 boys used his phone to call their boss for a ride home. Now, the parents of these kids told deputies that they thought their children were right here in Tampa attending an anti-drug rally. Now, Sennett and Holiday are now facing fraud and child neglect charges. In the newsroom, Jacqueline Ingles, ABC Action News.
Jacqueline, thank you.
How many of you have seen those groups? They're everywhere. And I bet you most of those kids, if you question them, are from Orlando. There's 4 guys in Orlando. They all work for one main guy. They broke off. These guys are new into it, so they were very cooperative, and they have a good case because they were new at doing this. They were scared when they got arrested, so they told everything. And they said that it was for profit. It's not for profit.
I'm sorry, how do they recruit the children?
How do they what?
Recruit the children.
Recruit?
Yes.
Usually, believe it or not, they recruit them in schools, at school buses. One kid who works for them will go to school and say, this is how you make money, come with me. They talk to the parents usually, and the parents are told one thing, and they do target, lower socioeconomic groups where, kids want cell phones, they have no other opportunity to make money, so they're willing participants. That's what makes it so difficult, and they don't mind being exploited. I would tell you, I know in the past, before I realized what was going on, I would give donations. I would never buy $8 bar of candy or whatever it was, but I'd say, here's $2, here's $3. Well, when these kids come back, everything's accounted for. They have to have as much money as they have missing from their plastic cups, and then their socks are checked, their shoes are checked, their pockets are turned inside out for any donations. And if they come back and haven't sold enough, they make them go back out and sell longer. On weekends, they are out usually 12 to 14 hours sometimes from the house. And it's an issue with the parents, too. Some parents are willing participants, and some parents, once they find out what's going on, will stop it. So it just depends. And that's an issue we've been working on because we're giving parents warning. And if they let the child go back out, then there's some neglect issues going on. Because it is illegal. It is breaking the labor law as well. These guys have actually been fined by the Department of Business Regulations, but it's civil fines. Some of them have been arrested, but it's not, law enforcement is also, they're not that aware of it because the parents will say they gave them permission, so they feel like it's okay. So that's another education that we're working on with law enforcement as well. Okay, so domestic violence, sex trafficking, and CSEC. The majority of the reports we receive at the hotline, and what we really see a lot of, is the sex trafficking of minors. And domestic violence, sex trafficking occurs when a U.S. citizen who has not attained 18 years of age is engaged in a commercial sex act. And that term, DMST, came about 6 years ago to make people more aware that it's happening right here with our own children. And that's why they use the word domestic minor sex trafficking. Well, because everyone used to think they're brought from other countries, they're being smuggled in, etc. But that's not the case. These are kids in our own schools, kids in our own neighborhoods. Commercial sex act means any sex act on account of which anything of value is given to or received by any person. So we have commercial sexual exploitation of a child, which is a form of sex trafficking, and DMST just specifies the U.S. citizens of that group. So examples of the commercial sex act would be prostitution, exotic dancing, stripping, and pornography. Here's some examples of actual reports we've received through the hotline. More specific type of cases of sex trafficking. Remember, exchanging of anything of value for the sex act. So a minor trading a sex act with an adult in exchange for a place to sleep. A pimp prostituting out an adolescent, which is more typical of what you think. A father trading his underage daughter for crack. Give me my head of crack and you can sleep with my 15-year-old. A mother allowing her landlord to have sex with her child as rent payment. A 15-year-old trading a sex act with an adult for money. A nightclub owner providing shelter and food for minors in exchange for exotic dancing. And the one before last, a 15-year-old trading a sex act with an adult for money. That's kind of a common thing that we hear. But again, I want to point out you don't have to have an identified pimp or a perpetrator in that. Boys are also victims. We don't hear a lot about boys. And pimps are also females, not just males. And boys are referred to as rent boys, house boys, or chickens. And it's a little bit different. Ages 11 to 14 are commercially exploited, and ages 15 to 19 are typically more independent. And they're known as renegades. And here's a website, Houseboys USA. They're known as houseboys. You can go on this website and many other websites and just order what you want. The pimp. Traffickers are known to engage in constant recruitment and attempt to entice our children into their control. They do this usually by 3 stages. They lure them in, they build trust up with the child, and then it's a payback stage. They tell the child, you just have to do this for me. I can't make the rent this week, or whatever it might be. Obviously, a pimp does not hold up a sign like that. But there's no, a pimp can be anybody. It's no longer the person with the top hat and the neat coat and what the old image is, stereotype is. It can be anybody. It could be somebody at school. It could be somebody at work. It could be somebody in the neighborhood, at the library. It could be just about anybody. And where do you think it occurs at? They're recruiting at the malls. Everywhere. Anywhere, everywhere. Buses. I will say, one thing I want to mention here too, this is supposed to be geared for schools, even though all of you aren't educational people in here, but we have charter schools. And usually a charter school is for children who have issues in their regular school. And they're more troubled children, more dysfunctional families. And we were receiving report after report after report, and these kids all went to the same school. And it turned out when we figured it out, they rode the city bus to school. They didn't ride the regular school bus because it was a charter school and it was out of their zone. And there was guys sitting on that bus recruiting these girls. Because all these girls knew that guy, but these girls didn't know each other before we got involved. And then they realized that, they went to the same school as well. So, it can be anywhere. City school bus, a young girl riding a school bus, or a young guy. So here's a letter, just to show you the mentality of the pimp a little bit. This was taken from an arrested sex trafficker in New York City. It was in his pocket, and it's called The Rules to the Game of Hoes. Now I have to put my glasses on. Always make them need and depend on you so you have power over them. Power is control. Make them understand that you don't need them, they need you, and they are replaceable. Never let them know if you need them deep inside. Never let no one get away with sneaking anything, because once they feel they can get caught, they can get away, they will always scheme. Number 4, no matter how much you like or care for one or any of them, don't trust none of them. Like Scarface, who do I trust? Me, that's who. 5, always stay 2 steps ahead of the game you have them playing. 6, don't let them know all your plans, but always try to know theirs. 7, make sure you own their mind, bodies, and souls, and test it out every so often to make sure. 8, keep your business on the low as possible when it comes to family and haters, because you can't trust none of them. 9, always try to know what's going on, make them tell on each other. 10, give respect when respect's due. Follow these rules and you should be Gucci. And this was in a pocket of a pimp that was arrested. Either he was in training or he was training somebody. So, common characteristics of a dependency child, which is DCF, and a commercial sexual exploited child. They have low self-esteem, history of physical abuse, history of sexual abuse, runaway episodes, drug abuse, troubled, dysfunctional family. They have 1 or 2 or all of these, and these are the type of children that are a higher target, but it can happen to someone who comes from a very functional family as well. So don't forget that. Tips for first encounters, interactions with potential victims. This is taken from Class Kids. They did a study with, I think it was California State Attorney's Office, and they created like a 4-page sheet to assist State Attorney's Office. And it says, building trust is a number 1 priority, which I think we know that in dealing with children and anything we want to get out of a child, we need to have a trust situation going on. Reassure the potential victim that you are there to help and you care about them. Terminology and cultural sensitivity are important. Knowing appropriate street terms help to build the trust. You have to know the same language, what you're talking about. Do not expect a full and honest story during your first encounter. Always try to be on the child's level. Avoid victim-blaming attitudes, body language, or behaviors. Avoid gasp or acting shocked. Avoid pity, judgment, or patronization. So if you're having a conversation with a victim or someone you think might be a victim, if you start showing judgment for that child, you think that child's going to continue talking to you. You have to be non-judgmental. And if that child tells you something that shocks you, you want to try not to act shocked. You want to try to encourage that child that they did the right thing, if that was the right thing to do, if it was. As opposed to, for example, a victim that I speak to on a regular basis, who's now an adult, she was telling me during one of our conversations that she kept a double-edged razor blade under her tongue while she was out on the street. And even till now, when I hear that, I want to kind of shiver and think, how do you manage that under your tongue, double-edged, even single-edged? I don't think I could manage. But, I had to say, wow, that's really smart. You kept yourself safe. Did you ever use it? We went on to the conversation. But do you think she would have told me more if I kind of said, oh, you stupid? How'd you, cut your tongue? Or whatever it might be. Always assess the safety and threat levels, and anticipate and expect that the victim may return to her pimp, because usually that's what happens, especially the more that they're into it, the most likely they'll return. Signs and language are important so you can communicate on the same page. Who's the daddy? The pimp. Who's the bottom bee or the bottom bitch? Right, I call it the administrative assistant to the pimp. It's the main person that does everything. Sometimes she's out making money too if the girls aren't making enough, but she's the one who's out there training them. And I refer to females, but there are also boys, and there's also female pimps. But I always refer, when I'm talking, male pimp and female. But yeah, it is the main person. Tricks, we know what tricks are. Stable, the whole group. Similar to folks and family. Stable, folks, and family are pretty much interchangeable. The whole family, the stable, the group. Wife-in-laws. If the child says that's my wife-in-law or my wifey, another term is wifey, who do you think that is? The other girls that are in the stable. So you have the main girl at the bottom, and all the other girls are wifeys or wife-in-laws. Dates, I think we all know what dates are. Johns, we know what Johns are. Out of pocket? Out of line. Right. She hasn't met the quota, not willing to play by the rules of the game, something's wrong, trying to leave, etc. The rules, every game has rules, and the rules in this life has its rules too. And one of them is that the girls cannot make eye contact with another pimp, or they're beaten for that. Now, a pimp can talk to each other, and they can exchange their girls among their agreement, but a girl cannot initiate it. Diamond is usually the highest producer. Pimps up, hoes down. HBO special, I think, but it also means hierarchy. Pimps are on the street, the pimps are on the sidewalk, the hoes are on the street. It's just reinforcing the hierarchy. Pimp circle is when you have a girl who's out of pocket or not obeying the rules, and they want to bring her back in. They want to teach her a lesson and use her as an example. They will encircle that victim, that girl, and basically beat the crap out of her, verbally and physically. Come home is when someone's come back to the group, back to the stable after trying to leave. So look at that picture. If you see this picture, if you walk into a situation, to a house or to a trailer, this is actually from an RV, and you see that. Do you see any signs in there? Concerns? Well, there's mattresses on the floor, lots of paper towels, KY jelly, a spray bottle, a bottle of alcohol, a condom, a hairbrush, and a cup of marbles. What does the marbles mean? It's the payment. It's the token for payment. So the person paid at the door and was given a marble, and whoever served them got the marble to keep track of the amount of people served. This is a video that I'm hoping will play. I might have to, I think I'm going to have to close this down and do it. And this is called Making Up the Girl, and it's a narrated story by Rachel Lloyd from Jim's in New York. And it's really more typical of what we see.
you know, you're 12 years old and you're living with your moms, and your mom's is struggling because she didn't think that life was really going to work out like this for her, and she doesn't have a man around, and the men that are around haven't always been that great. Sexual abuse is becoming kind of normal for you, and you think that other people don't have secrets that are as bad as you, and maybe you've tried to talk to somebody at school and they haven't really heard you, or maybe they just haven't had time to listen to you. And so you're seeing these girls on the videos, and they're so pretty and they're so sexy, and so your way at 12 of escaping into this fantasy world is to think about what it must be like to be one of these girls, and you know that adult men already look at you, and you wonder how you can kind of use that.
I was just a child, and that's how I was supposed to live, like a child and like an adult.
So one day you're coming out of school and there's a guy outside in a Cadillac, and he's nice looking. I mean, he's got the baseball cap and the jeans and the Timbs, and he tells you how pretty you are, and you know how pretty your hair looks, and it's been a while since anybody even really noticed anything about you. And for the first time, you feel like somebody's really interested in you, because now all of a sudden he's asking you about your dreams and your hopes and where your father's at, and he says that he can be a daddy to you.
The people that I shouldn't have depended on, I was depending on for support.
And so that night he takes you to a club and he puts you up on the stage and he gives you a few drinks, and there's men throwing dollars at you, and it's scary, but all the time you're just looking at his face in the back of the room, and he's like, you know, go ahead baby girl, go ahead, you're doing it for daddy. And you're feeling proud because nobody's ever said that to you. And so then that night he tells you that there's more stuff that you've got to do, and he takes you into a room and there's a man there, and he tells you to strip, and you think this is something you'll never do, and yet there's a part of you that already knew how to do this, because that's what your stepfather's been doing to you all these years before. And so you turn that trick, and it's like a part of you has died inside. And so you come out of the club that night, and you get in the car, and you know he's pumping 50 Cent, and he takes you to McDonald's, and he tells you, you did a good job tonight, sweetie. And he's stuffing his pockets with the $1,000 that he made. And right now, you're happy.
The people that I shouldn't have depended on, I was depending on for support.
You feel like this is the best that it's ever going to get, and everything else in your life has prepared you for this moment. All the sexual abuse, or the neglect, or the drama, or the pain, or the trauma has prepared you for tonight, where you stepped across a line that you always thought you'd never really quite step across. And you don't realize that night what it'll be like to be on the track and get raped. And you don't realize that daddy isn't really going to protect you. You don't realize what it's like to have a gun held to your head that night. You don't realize what it's going to be like when you catch your first STD. You don't realize what it's going to be like when you first come home and daddy beats you for the first time because you didn't make enough money. You don't know what it's going to be like to have cops offer to trade sex with you in exchange for not being arrested. And then sometimes you'll do that and they'll still lock you up anyway. You don't know what it's like to sit up in jail and know that you just made $1,500 for your pimp last night, but he won't come down and put $200 bail on just to get you out a few days early. You don't know what it's like to walk down the street at 6 o'clock in the morning when you're just getting off work and people are starting their day and they see you and they know what you do and they look at you in a way that you just don't feel like you belong in that world anymore. And you don't know what it's like to feel like you've lost part of yourself along the way and to feel like you'll never leave. And no matter how many times you try to leave, he'll always find you and catch you. But that night, all you care about is the fact you're riding in a Cadillac and you eat on McDonald's and you're listening to 50 and you got this one man who you really think loves you sitting right by your side.
Okay, so what are the national statistics? 1.5 to 2 million kids will go missing this year. 5,000 of those kids will die. 70% are victims of crime or will commit a crime while missing. But this bottom number, 2/3 of all runaways are recruited into the sex industry after 48 hours on the streets, is big. And this is where a lot of our sex trafficking victims are coming from. They're usually run away, and they need to survive, and it's called street survival. So you can go so long without food, you can go so long without a bed to sleep on, so then they start getting recruited and doing things for the wrong reasons. This is a child that was in foster care that went missing from school. She didn't come home from school. She's 17. She had run away 3 times prior. The first time she ran away was in the summer. And she had been gone for a couple of days the first time she ran away, and she came back and reported she'd been gang raped. And that's another thing. A lot of times they initiate these girls into this, and they usually gang rape them to try to break them down. But anyhow, she recanted. Nothing really happened with that. She ran away 2 other times, but it was just for 1 day. She never stayed away long. But in January, she goes missing. And she was in a foster home that had another foster child that was placed there, a foster brother. And the foster brother had reported to his caseworker that he had concerns for this child, that he had noticed that she's been hanging out in areas known for prostitution, that she's been hanging out with a particular person, an older gentleman, and that this is a gentleman that came and picked her up. And also this gentleman, she had called the foster brother and told him that she was on her way to Jacksonville and that she was going there for business, but she would not tell him what the business was. So with just that information, of course, red flags go off. And so I go on Backpage and I start looking for her. And Backpage, you can get escort services, and we all know what escort services are, right? It's not escort services, it's prostitution. So I go to escort services and I go looking for Brevard County, and this is what would pop up. You'll get a list of all the different ads, and I find her. This is her ad. It says new in town, which is true. She's new. She had not been doing this before. It says $100 special, and it says she's 28. Well, we know she's 17 and she's not 28. Of course, you have to be 18 and above to even put advertisements on Backpage, so no one is under 18 on their ads. But usually if they say 18, that means they're older. And if they're young, they say they're in their 20s. But it says, Tina here, I'm only here a short while and looking for fun. Don't miss me. I'm very fun-loving and fetish-friendly. I'm eager to meet mature and generous gentlemen. In calls and out calls available. Ask for Tina, and there's a phone number. So if you take that phone number, you Google it, guess what? 3 or 4 more ads pop up, all the different girls. So we knew, and we knew it anyhow, but it just confirms that there's a common denominator of a pimp. So then I take that phone number and I search a little bit more, and I find out that it's registered to JL Escort Services. So we have a 17-year-old that goes missing, and she's working for JL Escort Services under the control of a pimp. You can see her picture. This is a picture that was on Backpage. You can see it's in a hotel room. And you can see that she's not really that excited. It's not like a lot of pictures you'll see a lot different. And then again, like in the last training we did, now they're getting smarter and they show more the back of the child and not the front of the child when they know the child's a minor. But this child actually, this was referred to the FBI, and this child was actually located and recovered. This is another child that went missing several times, but would not come out of the life. She kept running. I have her picture in here just to show you the tattoos. If you notice tattoos on children that have dollar signs, that's an indicator that usually something's going on more so than just a tattoo. It means they're money producing. And usually there are dollar signs in a lot of these tattoos that you'll see. Also stars, that they're the star. This tattoo on her chest says successful, and that's really a pimp's name. His real name is Aaron Gordy. But it's all across her chest. And she has many tattoos, and this particular child was involved in many federal cases of prosecution against a total of 12 different pimps. This is her too. She's aged out. She's no longer 18. These are her pictures that she's posted that are open to the public. You can see all the tattoos. I use this picture because look at all the tattoos on her. And she's been branded by everybody she's ever worked for. She's got Pierre on one arm, who's in prison. She's got Dave on another arm, who's in prison. Successful, as far as I know, has never been arrested. not related to her anyhow. Then she has other tattoos on her neck as well. I want to show this little video. Let's see if it's going to work. I'm probably going to have to go the other way as well.
But I'm gonna tell you something. If you pay the price, you can get what you want. I can get it for you.
Really?
Now, if you want something really young, that 200 it just costs a little more than that.
Sure.
But how young you talking? Talk to me.
Well, how young do you have?
Well, I don't have nothing younger than 14.
Okay, no, 14 is good.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Well, you're gonna have to add something to that.
Sure.
What you willing to add to that too? Just talk to me.
Well, like I said, this is my first time out.
You know. Now you.
So the girls over there cost 2, is it?
That's the women.
The women.
Now, if I told you 2, and you want something young, and I tell you just to add something to it, just tell me you just pick a figure to that.
Well, I guess what, 3?
3. If you do 3, you got it.
He definitely just beat us, like, he'll probably stump you out, like, stump you, like, when you're on the ground, physically stump you. Yeah. He'll probably hit you with a belt, physically slap you, punch you.
He would beat me with broomsticks, handles, he would burn me with candles. He would take metal hangers and beat me with them and poke me with them, belts, anything that he can get his hands on, he would beat me with. The one time he had beat me so bad that he had ruptured my spleen and it put me in the intensive care unit. So it's like once you knew that he could almost kill you, you'd rather do what he says than to get beat again.
If you come to them, that'll be like 150.
Okay.
If they come to you out call, that'll be like 200.
Okay. And I got a hotel room, so that's an out call.
Yeah, that's out
Okay,
call.
so 200 each.
Yeah, an hour.
Okay, so I'll give you 400. Or do I give them 200 or I give it to you?
Me, right
okay,
now.
so I'll give you 400, and then we can tip the girls whatever on top of that.
Yeah, okay, that's about.
Is that all right with you?
Hold on, I run all this.
Okay.
These my girls.
Oh, okay.
They don't do nothing but look pretty and
We're all under 18. We're all the same age. There would be a few girls that I knew that were like in their 20s or whatever, but they had been doing it since they were our age anyways. I did wait till 12, and these girls were doing it since they were like 8 or 9, and now they're like 23.
I want to show them and tell them, like, what it feel like to be that hoe, to be degraded all the time, to be hit on, to be manipulated, to be sold all day, every day. Who was there to stop it? Nobody was there to stop it.
So we wanted to share with you some of the education projects that are currently being worked on. Florida's Sexual Health Education Community Outreach Toolkit was developed by the Department of Education, and there is going to be a component added to that on human trafficking, so it will help community members understand how to improve the health and academic success of students related to human trafficking. And teacher lesson plans are being developed by the Florida Department of Education, also in collaboration with Born to Fly for grades K through 8. There is online training that's being developed by the Children's Advocacy Center with a focus on school personnel. The Office of Safe Schools from the Florida Department of Education also is part of the task force, Governor's Task Force, along with the DOE Office of Healthy Students, and they are working on putting together some programming that's still in the planning stages. And since most of you are not education folks, I just wanted to show you that the need for you is it really to establish the need for schools to get involved with this. You saw the slide that Sue showed you with the numbers of cases that have been reported in the first 6 months. So in Orange County, I think our number was less than 60. So we have 180,000 students, and looking at that, you go, oh, it's only 60 students, or it's only 60 children. So we need you to help establish the fact that we need this information to be shared with our teachers, our staff members, and with our students. Also, in every school district in the county, there is a school health advisory council, and the school health advisory council is to meet 4 times a year and discuss issues related to the health of students. So contact the school district that you're closest to, that you're with, and see how you can become involved with that. Also, if you have the ability to do trainings for teachers, if you have the ability to be guest speakers for students, and there are also full-service community schools on some of our campuses that welcome additional pieces to be placed in like a health center for the students. So I just like to encourage you to get involved in those.
Did you already cover that one?
Yes.
Okay. So a lot of people always ask, how do you report? I don't know if this is on. No, it's not. Okay, how do you report? There's a National Human Trafficking Resource Center hotline, and there's DCF abuse hotline up there. Always, though, if something's happening right in front of you, call 911. You don't have to wait and go through here. But if you suspect something, you can call this for adults and this for children.